Joining me now are Jeremy Saland, a former assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office trial division, and Ankush Khardori, a former federal prosecutor who is now a senior writer for Politico magazine. Jeremy, let me just first start with you about what is happening here in the larger picture of how the court's being discussed, the judge, the prosecutors, and now the jury. What are the implications for the American justice system?
You have to first separate the Donald Trump who's on trial, who is innocent until proven guilty. He's as responsible as you and I are, which is nothing until that burden and if that burden is met. Separate that from the Donald Trump who is vitriolic, who says reprehensible things, who's dangerously reckless, and is personally responsible for undermining the criminal justice system. And I say that boldly because it's accurate. And these other folks, some in the media, some who just follow him, it's almost as if they're imbibing on some Jonestownian Kool-Aid, and they're just going after it and perpetuating it. And my big fear, and everyone's fear should be, that it's something that could be indelible, at least for this generation, and that's very concerning. Innocent until proven guilty, and if proven guilty, but outside of that courtroom, it's really ugly.
Well, to that point, the Jonestown Kool-Aid. I mean, they've proffered this drink before, right? This is what happened. I mean, unwinding institutional integrity is a central part of the Trump project, right? I mean, whether it's the elections and the election workers or the jurors and the justice system, this is how the cookie crumbles, right? This is how you get people to believe that the whole thing is rigged as an insurance policy against a loss for Donald Trump.
And you should expect that whoever and whatever they believe, whether they're in Alabama or New York City, they're going to uphold the law, listen to the law, and put their personal opinions aside. But it's incredibly difficult when you have someone like Donald Trump doing what he's doing outside that courtroom.
Ankush, I know you were, I don't know, is it making it or not making it to be the subject of a Jesse Waters tirade, but, you were flagging, I think very rightfully so and presciently, that these jurors are going to have a lot to contend with, that they may not feel comfortable being on the jury. They may not want to be public. We saw some departures this morning. Within the system as it exists now, what can be done to protect them short of the judge just requesting that the media broadly doesn't report out important personal details?
Well, I think that the judge took that step, but a second and more important step, which is that he ruled that the answers that the prospective jurors provide to the questions about their past and current occupations will not be made public, and they won't be present in the trial transcript for the public to review. I think that that's a very positive step. I don't think it will necessarily tamp all this down. In fact, I know that it won't. But it's a step in the right direction. I think the problem here is that it's kind of hard to change course midstream. This should have been resolved before this began. The judge issued an order on jury selection. The questions were public. Everybody knew what was going to happen. This was all eminently predictable. And so I also have to say I really take issue with some comments he made today directed at the press. This is not the press's fault. It's his fault and the DA's office's fault.
Can we talk a little bit about how to manage the situation? Because I know, not only is changing midstream potentially problematic, the information about jurors is something that defendants traditionally get in the process of vetting them, right? Donald Trump is a very particular political animal, but is it problematic to not give the defense information like the jurors' employment or where they live? I mean, can you actually withhold that information from one side?
So this, Alex, this goes back to what we discussed. I just mentioned before. In the courtroom, Donald Trump is entitled to the same things that you and I would be entitled to have. And if he's going to accurately and fairly vet those potential jurors, he should know how long they've lived in Manhattan. He should know where they're from originally, not necessarily the street address, but what state are you from? What kind of work do you do? How long have you been in Manhattan? These are very reasonable and important questions that I have gotten for every juror, whether I was a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney. It's the means by which he uses it later on,
right,
and other people to figure out who that person is who we're trying to protect so that integrity of the justice process can exist. You don't exploit it selfishly on the pulpit outside the courtroom.
Can you appeal? Like, could they use that as grounds for appeal? Like, we were basically, picking this jury with one hand tied behind our back. We didn't realize we didn't have all the information.
Well, they're getting the information. They're getting the information. They're getting those questions and getting those answers.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. And what is being done is the defense and the prosecution will know the name, but they're getting a number. But other than that, they're getting the information that they need, and they're being allowed to ask the questions. So there's no, that I have seen as of yet, some appellate issue that they're going to turn around. I'm sure they may try, but this is being done fairly. It's not what's happening in the courtroom. It's what's happening outside
the courtroom. Ankush, when we talk about jurors who are sort of, we're still looking for alternates. I believe there are 5 more alternates need to be impaneled, if you will. Juror 2 effectively got cold feet the other day. I would assume there's a particular need for alternates in a trial like this, given the high stakes and the high wire act that it is participating in this trial. Like, is it possible, pardon the elementary nature of this question, but can jurors leave a trial if there are sort of external pressures that happen throughout the, in the course of this trial, and be replaced, at any point? Is there a limit to the number of jurors who can say, I'm tapping out?
These are very good questions, and this could get tricky. I mean, so during the trial itself, yes, if something were to happen that the judge deemed appropriate to excuse someone, he could, in theory, do that and pull in one of the alternates. That's what the alternates are there for, right? Or if someone gets sick or whatever. But you're right. I mean, this isn't really the typical case or the typical fact pattern where we're just worried about people getting sick. And now he has 6, which is an unusually a high number of alternates, but or he's planning to get 6. But I would not be surprised if the person who raised the concerns this morning is followed by more people. I mean, they weren't all there today. I mean, she was there because she had called the judge's chambers last night and the judge asked her to come in to explain. It's very possible that every other juror had similar experiences yesterday.
And I'm assuming there's not really a precedent for a mass departure or a significant number of jurors departing. Is there?
There's not. But I mean, look, in theory, if everyone he currently has seated were to beg off, he now has in place a system that will at least limit the further public disclosure of some of the details that led to the unpleasantness for this person yesterday, and maybe other people. So the doomsday scenario you're kind of positing, which is you're right to be concerned about, I don't think it would end up with the trial blowing up. It would they'd need to go further and just impanel more jurors.
Literally building the plane on the runway, as it were, it seems. Ankush Khardori, thank you so much, Ankush, for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. Jeremy, please stick around because I have more to ask you.